Hello and welcome to Second Sunday Readings. My name is Sean Killingsworth. I'm your host and curator of the series, and I'm really glad everybody was able to step away from the TV and the leather ball and come and join us today for some amazing poetry. Today's featured poets are Zoe Stindt, Krista Lukas, and Lannie. Is it Stabile? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Great. I'm deeply grateful for all three of you for joining us today. I am super excited. I've been stalking you all on social media. And Krista, I know you sort of through a friend of ours, Janika Robinson, who did the artwork for the covers of the Marin Poetry Center members anthology that I've been editing for the last 3 years. So lots of little connections all over the place. And so if everyone is ready, let's get started. This month, I'd like to kick off the reading by asking our poets a question just to break the ice. So one thing I think that a lot of other writers like to know about is when they're reading a poet's work, you look at the stuff and you wonder, well, who influenced you? Like, did you take your form because you were reading, Sylvia Plath, or did you do Haibun because you've been reading a book about Haibun? Where is your aesthetic coming from, and where is your the instinct for your turn of phrase? How has that been influenced by what you've read? So if any one of you want to jump in.
I don't think about how my form was created. Like when you asked that question, the first people that came to mind was Jason B. Crawford and Rhoda, both incredible poets from Michigan, who I'm good friends with. And about 5 years ago at this point, we all got together. I knew Jason from school, and we met Rhoda at an open mic because Jason and I were like, we've never been to an open mic. Let's just kind of do it and get the butterflies out. And we did that. We met Rhoda, and we all clicked. And so we ended up sending our stuff to one another and like editing and tweaking and suggesting things. And so I know for a fact that my poetry has been influenced by these two people. I couldn't sit down and tell you exactly what it was, but the poetry was, and me as a writer has been influenced. I know I would not be where I am without those two.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who are influenced by their cohort, right? Like it sometimes in reaction to even. I remember when I was doing my MFA, there was a guy who was writing these really at least to me, irritating prose poems, and they had this character. I think his name was Pod, and I just hated Pod, and so I wrote everything that was sort of anti-Pod. So anyway, what about you guys, Zoe and Krista?
Well, I feel that I've been influenced by every poet I've ever read, either for what to do or what not to do. So I decided to take this question as, well, what are the poems that I keep going back to? So I keep going back to One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. I just love that poem. I can read it all the time. And then I also really like the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. And that's another one that there's so many layers to it, and I don't pretend to be anything like either of those two, but I really admire them, and I would like to write form poems sometime. I've written a couple, but not concentrating on that at the moment.
Yeah, I love Elizabeth Bishop too. I'm not as familiar with the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. I think I did have to read it at one point, but in one brain cell and out the other for me, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this question. I feel like I'm already being influenced by both of y'all's answers too, which is just speaks to why we do this and why we have poetry community. It's just we couldn't do it. This is no void, we couldn't do it without kind of pinging off of each other constantly. I brought my two people, Natalie Diaz and Ross Gay. I feel like they actually both did really similar things for me, and teaching how to hold grief and joy in the same, maybe not the same hand, but in the same balance, and kind of how to write towards both of them at the same time. And yeah, Roske definitely influenced me in terms of like how to spark that joy and also not ignore the hardship of the world. Wow, that's amazing. You introduced Roske once. He's kind of lore in the MFA program and I'm in right now. And Natalie Diaz did a similar thing of I was at a talk of hers once where she was talking about how to bloom an image next to the wound. And so thinking about how to hold grace within the hardship. And so I just think about them a lot and kind of the grace that both of them have of kind of facing the world front and center, face on, and then also bringing us back to that space of joy, that space of love, and that warm and generous spirit that they both have. So yeah, when you asked us that, those were the two people that immediately sprung to mind.
Oh, cool. Love it. Love it. Yeah, I this is always such a wonderful question to ask. I mean, if I do say so myself, because it, as Lannie says, it allows you to kind of have a different perspective on who might influence your own writing, and sort of how you can bring other ideas into what you're doing. It's really kind of a fun way to go. So thank you all for sharing that with us. And I don't know if you are ready, I'd love to hear some poems from our featured readers. And Zoe, you are actually first up. So this is Zoe Faye Stindt, everybody. She, they is a queer bicontinental poet with roots in both the French and American South. Their work has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize, featured or forthcoming in places such as Southern Humanities, Ninth Letter, Poet Lore, and it's been gathered into a chapbook called Bird Body, which won the Cordella Press's inaugural Gwendolyn Brooks Poetry Prize. She lives in Ames, Iowa, where she's an MFA candidate at Iowa State University and a community farm volunteer. And you can learn more about her at zoefaystindt.com. I believe Glenn is going to pop all this information into the chat for you. And Zoe, with no further ado, please unmute yourself. You are on.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I have Bird Body right here. It's still a pretty fresh baby for me. It's my first chapbook, and it's been kind of wild to just have her sitting on my desk for the last couple months. It came out in October, and so I've been in relationship with this book as a material object since then, which has been really interesting. So yeah, I'm going to read some poems from Bird Body and then spring into a couple newer pieces if we have time. Bird Body is a collection of work that wrangles with how to like become in the world as a girl-ish femme adjacent person, and kind of the lessons that came along with that growing up in my childhood, and thinking about both the joys as Roske and Natalie Diaz teach, right? Like how to hold the joys and the pain of that together. And so thinking about the delight of being in this girlish body and also the hardship that came with. And so it really works through, it's like a not quite recovery narrative around a kind of central violence around sexual assault, but also the other ways that the world can be graceful or not so graceful in the when greeting a femme person in the world. So I'm going to read the first poem, I think, and it's called Bird Body because of my relationship with birds and the speaker's relationship, both real and surreal, to birds in the collection. And having a surreal lens, I think, became really important to me as retelling trauma kind of needs this distance that surreal and fantastic elements can kind of give you to take a step away from that hardship while wrangling with it, to kind of deal with it with a sidelong glance, I guess, to allow for that distance while still wrangling the hard things. So the central bird in here is the heron, and this first poem is called Our Heron. Mornings, she doctors me with that gray beak, picks out the growing lumps from my breast's hot pulp and tosses them in the river. Minnows feast. She fills in the dents around my nipple, nudges the plastic curve of my skyla, settles its thin bones so it sits right, my uterus still, womb empty. She's done this already. Mom's cancer dug out, the cracks in her vertebrae filled with tar river water and mud, a cob to build her strong again. When the sun goes, the heron cuts through rising fog, spears herself a sunfish. She brings back a banquet, lays out clams and blue crab for us. She piles driftwood, lights a fire. We wet our fingers in the meat. Another part that writing through this body of work and this kind of central reckoning of kind of sexual assault and how to heal from that is kind of the idea of how trauma lives always in the body, right? And we're never without it. It's always kind of this ghost kind of lingering inside us somehow, and it comes out at really unexpected times. And so part of the central project of this collection was thinking about how to write through that this is never this thing that goes away, but that kind of we have to learn to live through and live with. And this poem is about that. So this is after emailing your mom, another poem about it. She says she's surprised it still haunts you, brushing the needles from your hair. I'm hard and wish to hell I weren't. You wonder what to write back, how to explain the hostage your nervous system has trained, how the trauma lives quiet for months, careful not to tip anything over inside you until you find yourself on a date in your own car, a man's arms wrapped around you in fervor, and you have gone slack. Silvergrass limp with first frost, your voice blued in its tunnel. You're sure you were in control, but your body, now bowed into a ball in the driver's seat, didn't get the signal. Everyone wants you to stop writing about it, this unkillable thing. Enough, enough. You have been loved. Yes, you are fortunate. Don't harden yourself, baby, your mom writes back. She pulls the splinters from your teeth. Stay open. Thank you. Thanks, y'all. It's good to see your hands. I like seeing everyone's hands. I don't know if any of you follow the second, what's it called? No, Wednesday poetry night, Wednesday night poetry with Kai Goggins. And she holds her hand up to, I know you, Sean, because that's how we know each other. But she holds her hand up to the video, and I always love that moment of connection, despite being on our individual computers. Sean, I forgot for a moment that was our connecting bridge. I love it.
Yeah, she's wonderful. She read for us. She's another person I stalked on social media. So that's how I get all the good poets.
Yeah. Oh, she's such a dear heart. How much time do I have left? I forgot to look at the time when we started.
I mean, there's no hard and fast rule. I think we took a few minutes to start, so you're good. You've got probably a good 10 minutes to go, at least. Yeah.
Thank you. I will read two more from here, and then I'll read a new poem or two. So you may have noticed already that there's a mother figure in Bird Body, and I think there's some hardship in that, and kind of the a kind of rocky relationship with that mother figure. But there's also a lot of co-healing in this collection, which was really important to me to include. So I think I'll lift us up from here. So thank you for holding kind of some of the harder space with me. And I'll have a couple more joyful poems. So this is August. Impossibly, we wake to 70 degrees and the air moving, a loophole, a mistake in a pattern. Everyone breaks out, porches fill, rosé, hey, the Beatles start their cha-cha. And here you are, black dress, purple scrunchy, middle of a Sunday afternoon. Under my palm, Your arm is the softest thing I've ever felt, decades worth of freckles collecting. We curl and press into each other, two willow tendrils, daughter, mother. You are learning how to let your grief splay out. I'm learning how to help unfold it, let it not grow shame in spots without absorbing into my own body. Schist pillar, cicada shedding again and again on 100 solitary trees. No one holds you in your weakness anymore. Rubs an endless circle into your back. In my bed, your life cracks through its bald exterior, starts rising. Okay, one more from Bird Body. Thank you. I was gonna say this is a spoiler because it's the last poem, but it's not quite the last poem. This is Sharing the Table, about kind of a spring day and recovering, coming through one dark tunnel into a brighter spot. Sharing the table. Stranger, I'd like to put my head in your lap. I don't often write like this, exclaiming, proclaiming, full of happy little pies. Our table neighbors wave down their friends with bright, sweaty faces. Yes, ours. We've protected each other's computers, our loose change and tacos, and now we've built this small little land here under the oaks with our salsa warming the flies' bellies. You keep the grackles out of my watery cold brew. What love. I let my floral top slink off my shoulders. Let the sun who has already burned me warm my skin like I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. I'll stretch out my long, too pale legs and let them sprawl along the skinny picnic table planks. Let my face get pink. Let the live oak drop her molting all over me. I watch a bird beyond the fence tear into the little garden snake he's caught, limp curl in his mouth. You turn, pick a leaf out of my tangled hair. See? You're already taking care of me. Let me lean into you like the roads bend, trusting its body. Let it be a hot head of hair warming your thigh, a strange and surprising love, unkempt. Like the napkins flying in the wind and nobody running after them. Let nobody run after them. Just this once, let them press themselves into the tree bark, begging, ruining themselves in the light. Thank you. That's Bird Body. Thanks, y'all. I still have Cordella actually sold out of copies, which made me feel very cool. And I have some author copies still. So if anybody is interested, there are copies on my website. Yeah. So I'm gonna read a couple newer poems that I think are extensions of Bird Body. We never finish writing these books, right? We like put them down and they get published maybe, or they don't, they end up in a drawer, but they carry on their lives of their own, and kind of float around us, I think. And so these are some of the poems that feel like continuations, extensions of Bird Body, and that kind of healing space. So this is, let's see, let me start with Over a Fish Basket at Bubba's. This is a Virginia poem. I grew up in North Carolina, so my dear Virginia neighbors. Over a fish basket at Bubba's. These days are thick with lonely. In a crab shack off Route 13, somewhere in Virginia Beach, where the white men gather by the dozens to suck meat from shell, I turn all gurgle over flounder, fried, greased, everything seems splitting. You know the moment. When you snap the car's visor into your face and everything else slaps with it. The gone friend, bad GPS directions, too many potholes. Through my puddle of dissolve in this gummy and overcrowded restaurant, I see the heron, shadowed by faces, distilled by window glass, curl and uncurl her neck on the dock. I remember. We are so tender. Everything shatters in its loop, melts in a stew of chrysalis somewhere inside our still evolving bodies full of pus and sour, and we lift a wand to that muck and call it up, tell it stand, sculpt a living out of the clotted mess we were yesterday and the day before and the day before that. Before that, beyond the men, the heron curls and uncurls her neck. Inside me, my small reef of sorrow exhales, starts to call the fish back. All right. I have one last poem that is continuing this joy spree. And I just want to say thank you. I feel really glad to be in this room. I think it takes a special crowd to gather on a football Sunday, a sports ball Sunday, in celebration of poetry and people. So thank you guys for showing up. And thank you to my co-readers and to Sean for gathering us. It feels really lucky to be here. This is Dance Dance Apocalypse. And actually, I got an email 3 hours ago that this will be featured on Verse Daily coming soon. So that'll be live in the world at some point. So yay for that. Dance Dance Apocalypse. Oh, future home. Foxgloves bob, nod despite heavy heads, pull up tripwires from the garden bed, juice tomatoes into pulp to spread on your skin for youth or absolution, 2 fat peels for each eyelid so you can see red, red, red. Nothing burns anymore, nothing scrapes. Our toes have turned back into the salamanders we knew they once were. Wriggling things pull us mush like huskies towards the riverbed to wet their underbellies. Your ghosts have stopped calling, your sisters stopped biting, the ivy-burned arm grown tough with scales. Oh, heaven keeper, handsome Hy-Vee cashier, last good Cane's chicken with the fat Texas toast like a hymnal. There must be room for all of us. I won't fill out my name tag with dystopia if you won't, dear heart. I'll hold your hand, I'll lick your wounds, I'll be the emergency contact that can't get to the phone right now. And we can pray for a little sex peek, for a little shake me down, for one good club left and all the sweaty bodies wringing each other of each wrong and raunchy of every left behind agony. And we'll sleep so good after. Yes, we'll sleep so good in that hot, butter slick, most possible night. Thank you. Thanks, y'all.
That's all we get? That's a fantastic ending, though. Whew, I need to cool down. Thank you so much, Zoe. Geez, that was so fun. What a great... So I personally struggle with writing about the body. So listening to you was really kind of nice for me to say, oh, okay. That's how you do this. And that's how you do this. Very instructional.
Thank you.
So thank
I would also recommend Body Work by Melissa Febos if anyone is.
Oh, I love her. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good recommendation. Thank you. All righty. Wonderful. And we're not done yet. So our next poet is Krista Lukas. So Krista is a writer.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Krista is a writer whose essays, stories, and interviews have been published in The Sun, Jewish Women's Literary Annual, and the LA Review of Books. She's the author of a poetry collection called Fans of My Unconscious, poems which have been selected for the Best American Poetry in 2006, and the Writer's Almanac. Raised in a small business family with old country ancestors who were farmers, mail carriers, dishwashers, risk takers, and immigrants, she took detours into circuit board assembly and teaching. Yet she never lost her love, sparked by her favorite teacher in 3rd grade of reading and writing. So Krista, the spotlight is on you. And if you can unmute yourself and are ready to go, we'd love to hear you.
Morning. The stillness, the radio's news, the scent of rain. My neighbor bending to pick up his newspaper in its orange plastic bag tossed on the step. The cars all heading this way and that. A fine spray beneath their wheels. Vapor rising from the sidewalks, and the light of the eastern sun slanting long as if there's all the time in the world. On the morning of Thursday, September 29th, 2016, my husband dropped me off to get an MRI and went to get bagels. My general practitioner had prescribed the scan because I'd been experiencing unusual symptoms, and he wanted to rule out MS and Parkinson's. I figured it wasn't going to be either of those, and so I thought it would be a typical day. Go home, sit on the couch, save my energy for yoga, after yoga, go to bed, and end up back in the living room. I thought it would be my typical day, not the life-changing day it turned out to be. The doctor who read my scan showed us a mass in my brain, said it was probably malignant, and told us to go to the emergency room right now. My husband fainted then and there. The doctor looked at me and said, "It's always the guys." The news washed over me in my usual fog. Glioblastoma. More poetic than malignant tumor the size of a baseball. Sounds better than a growth squeezing the bejesus out of my brain or smashing it gradually into my skull. Glioblastoma, a little violent because of blast right in the middle, but even in my psychosis, when I believed I'd been Shakespeare and someone was shooting patients, I'd caught its nickname, Glio. That's what I'd say when anyone asked, "Do you know why you're here?" I would say, "I had a Glio." Glee, lightheartedness, delight, merriment, plus, oh, an exclamation of pain or surprise. And I always said had rather than had, because having had the surgery, I felt certain and relieved that the entire thing was behind me.
Photos.
Okay, so before my glio was partially dug out, or in medical terms, resected, I had begun feeling slow and disconnected. I was living inside a thick, one-way glass bubble. I could see out, but no one could see in. I was inside this bubble every moment of every day, but I didn't realize it until I was out of it. Bliss to Emerald Bay. We walked on a path carved into the side of a cliff. Skyward rose a forested slope, and earthward a plunging into the deepest blue. Last time, the beauty was astounding. Now it struck me only as an impression, distant and faint. I considered trying to impose order on these poems, but my brain was scrambled at the time, and there was no order. I'm reading them in a scattered manner, similar to the way I experienced what I'm attempting to describe. This is my room in the intensive care unit, or ICU, where I stayed following brain surgery. Advice to the hospital. Gowns should be bigger. Patients should do yoga in bed. We should drink more water from cups with straws, not from cups with straws. Water should be in easy reach. Patients should learn the order in which to eat food. Patients should laugh more often. Patients should eat while they can breathe. Okay. Every employee was rushing, and no one had time to listen except the chaplain, a woman who held my hand and told me I was beautiful when I cried and let me feel what I was feeling. I wrote and sketched these, as you can see, on the back of an envelope. Feelings: vulnerable, frightened, lonely, irritated, discouraged from expressing these, would like to be able to express them while walking. Underline, underline, underline. Ask nurse when and can a home health worker in training for and. I noticed that both vulnerable and lonely have similar cat-bird-like illustrations. For some reason, frightened has what looks like a piece of pizza beside it, and irritated appears to have elements of an American breakfast: a fried egg, toast, and potatoes. One of the worst parts of being hospitalized was being sedentary, and my favorite time was physical therapy, when I would get to go for a short walk. In the ICU, the bed and the sheets were divinely comfortable, and it was impossible to get any rest. They wake you every hour to check your vitals. There was construction involving a jackhammer, and the Blue Angels were doing an airship. The best thing about brain surgery was that I did not have time to prepare. MRA Thursday morning, air ambulance from Reno to San Francisco Thursday night, number of tests on Friday, and based on the results, brain surgery rescheduled from Sunday to Saturday. And oh, the brain surgery would have done the trick. Then I only would have been at risk for having a seizure, standing, walking, driving, ladder climbing, dancing, hearing more than 3 words at a time. No, I needed the chemotherapy pill and radiation, which came with a host of uncomfortable side effects. At first, I wondered why the paper cuts on my eyelid and earlobes. Then I noticed I was being careful with my fingernails, thinking for once I might need to file them, when actually they had become thin, the edges sharp blades. To sleep, I would need to be suspended. No contact with fabric or heat of any kind. I would need to be cool, to be held weightless. I wrote basic notes to myself, such as these, accompanied by sketches. Joss is a friend. Makeup. Marie is a friend. Minimal makeup. Scott is my husband. It's true that Joss wears makeup, irrelevant to her being a friend. It's true Marie wears minimal makeup, but again, irrelevant to her being a friend. And Scott is my husband, illustrated by either an odd hairdo or a spider. Renown Health. Our physicians and nurses would like to make sure we answer all of your questions and concerns. Please use this paper to write down anything you would like to discuss when we visit your room. He needs to understand what happened. He keeps getting confused. I keep telling him thank you and you should leave so I can have my favorite dessert. So give us a little time. Please send Scott ASAP. Thank you. A 3-word poem. Flower, moonlight, anxiety. Again, I awake in a future life, glimpse a calendar with a future number on it. Next time a nurse wants to know the year, I try to remember. Something 35. When my husband appears, I ask, what millennium is it? He says, millennium. That's always the hardest one. I am dismayed. If millennium is hard, what about century? What about year? My husband has something to say. He has moved on, married someone new, has children with her. He speaks a language I don't recognize. He explains as kindly as such a thing can be explained. He cannot take me in. My mother is angry, he said this, and he is furious with her. She does not want me either. I overhear my sister and her husband talking, their kids, the farm, how busy they are. We all know what my diagnosis means. My family thought I was already gone. I have been forgotten. I believed everyone was tricking me, including the nurses, so I wrote painstakingly this misspelled question. Why do nurses lie to patients? I was obsessed with the number 100. Uncle Don and Aunt Barbara came. I thought I might never see them again, but Uncle Don leaned down, gave me a kiss on the forehead, and said, I've always loved you and I always will, which were kind words and words that hurt my heart. Aunt Barbara told me Uncle Don ate 200 pieces of candy in one sitting. When I told Scott, he said, that's impossible, and used my tray table to illustrate, but I wouldn't be talked out of it. At home, between hospital stays, I was talking to myself for hours at a time. Once I said, I just figured out my parents are 100 years apart. I wonder how they pulled that one off. My husband fell out of his chair laughing. My sister tried to reason with me. No, dude, they're not 100 years apart. They're only like 5 years apart. The next day, Dad sat with me, a paper and pencil, and wrote out numbers. I was born in 1941. Your mom was born in 1946. Then he did a subtraction problem and said, see, it's 5 years, not 100. When I introduced my sister and her husband to someone at the hospital, I said, this is my sister and her husband. They're really good at taking care of people. They have 100 kids. My sister said, actually, we only have 3. Her husband added, sometimes it feels like 100. The point where a person forgets is when cancer is cured. My friend Marie, a nurse's assistant, cured cancer. I can die of cancer and save everyone ever who will die of cancer. My mother was in prison long enough to learn neurosurgery, and she cured cancer. Poetry cured cancer. My brother-in-law cured cancer, and the cure was medical marijuana. Time for a happy story, and then Dad will leave. He turned out to be a neurosurgeon who never spoke about it in this life, and he is the one who really cured cancer. I can recover, and everyone else ever who will die of cancer will die. I have to get the earth back on its axis before cancer can be cured. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Sean, for hosting this, and thank you for Second Sunday readings. Also, of course, thank you to my fellow readers and to the audience.
Thank you so much, Krista. That was so moving. I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
And yeah, I agree. The flower moonlight anxiety, I think, is a chord that is struck within many of us for many different reasons. So that was just beautiful.
Thank you.
So I'll take a deep breath. So our final poet is Lannie Stabile. So Lannie is a queer Detroiter, the winner of Outright's 2020 chapbook competition in poetry, and a back-to-back semifinalist for the Button Poetry Chapbook Contest. Lannie was also named the 2020 Best of the Net finalist. Her debut poetry, full-length, Good Morning to Everyone Except Men Who Name Their Dogs Zeus, was published in 2021 by Cephalo Press. Her fiction debut, Something Dead and Everything, is now out with ELJ Editions. You can find her on Twitter at Lannie Stabile or at Not a Lit Mag, where she throws random writing contests and open mics. So Lannie, if you are ready, I would like you to please take it away.
I'm ready. And thank you, Sean, for inviting me to this. I really appreciate it. I was hoping I would be invited someday.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. So thank you for accepting.
I do want to start off by saying that, of course, it's February, it's Black History Month, and I would not be comfortable being a feature if I didn't highlight at least one Black voice tonight. And this is a Jason B. Crawford Stan account. So I'm going to read Jason from Jason's book, Good Boy. And this poem is called, And Because We Didn't Want Our Fathers to Know. And because we didn't want our fathers to know, we hushed into the school yellow locker room, ran across 3 highways of basketball chatter, while men screamed at each other over the court's jamboree of screeching new shoes. Something about the breaking of rules or laws or the morality of hunger. We kept quiet in the final row of benches, asked ourselves to bare quivering palms, the soft beasts flicked on by our tongues, the teaching of being young, simple wanting, what anger we can stuff in our jaws, bent the body into silver faucets. There was the one time we were almost caught, the taste of your flesh rancid in my mouth. After that, every time I'd tell you, no one was in here. No one would find us. No one would even care. I've been wrong before. I will be again. So I encourage you to check out Jason B. Crawford if you're not familiar with their work. I thought, what the heck am I going to read tonight? It's February, it's close to Valentine's Day. Hey, let's read some love poems. However, if you're familiar with my work, I don't often write happy things, but I will get as close to a love poem as possible here tonight. And to start, I'm going to read from Good Morning to Everyone Except Men Who Name Their Dog Zeus. This first poem is called Lita. If you've ever seen swans fuck, you'd know it's a folded napkin in a dither while a second lays flat, soiled, praying for dinner to end. The male tops the female body, the male tops the female in a freshwater body. She must float them both. She is submerged, beak beneath the ripples, lost to the jaw around her noose-length neck. The deed lasts 8 seconds. After, he glides to the edge of the pond, distancing himself from her, while she honks, reaching back, trying also to rid herself of him. Zeus appeared to Leda as a swan, then raped her. I apologize. I usually start that poem off with a trigger warning of sexual assault, and I forgot to do that. There are a couple of poems I want to read from this book, and they kind of work off of each other. His worst case scenario. Her smile is the third curve that tattoos his eye. He licks at the plump zero her lips carve out when surprised by his wolf whistle. Her insecurity is serenic. He invites her to dinner. It may scrape his mind whether or not she's the one. She isn't. She has Instagram and an associate's degree. She lets him kiss her once, but treads midnight alone. He is horny, disappointed. The night was a total bust. The company was lackluster, the meal mediocre. He wants his $50 back. And then the opposing side, or the other side of that night, her worst case scenario. He grins, hello. Lips, nose, and eyes are a handsome constellation. He makes her laugh, shows just enough interest to keep her guessing, then suggests dinner. He tells her about his nonprofit, his dreams, and his tabby, and thoughtfully probes her for more profound stats. They share a kiss and a cab. His hands are shards when he rapes and kills her, shredding wrists and thighs, tearing them wide open. His lips, nose, and eyes are a black hole as he makes her disappear. So I'm going to shift a little bit. It is still the topic of sexual assault. I realized once I published Good Morning to Everyone Except Men Who Named Their Dog Zeus that I wasn't quite done getting my anger out. I probably never will be, but I do have one more chapbook coming out about that topic, and that's coming out with Variant Lit this year. It's called When the Forest Finds You. So I thought I would read one poem from there. This is called, and I do want to preface the way the book is written. It uses horror tropes to talk about sexual assault. So like every single poem is a horror trope. So this particular poem is called Enter Teenage Heartthrob. Everything about the boy is sexy. Even the skeleton's joyriding in his blood-red Camaro. He spent 2 summers rebuilding that car, 18 building his reputation. When he sweeps back tawny bangs with leading man fingers, she does all she can not to faint. And sometimes she thinks she would amputate herself at the wrist to be that hand, or the victim to that smile. He bares his teeth and she wonders when she will learn to say clever things like, hello, and can I get a ride? Instead of owning a tongue that stumbles during the climax. She watches him sharpen charm until it slices through a tank top. She watches him stack bodies in the back seat. She watches him collect girls that are not her. And because I'm a pain in the ass, and this has been a night of poetry, but I am a poet who also writes fiction, flash fiction. I'm going to finish the night off reading a short story or a flash fiction piece from Something Dead and Everything, my debut fiction. And this is a love story. It's sad, but I swear it's a love story. It's called Dreamers with Empty Hands. When she's in the shower, I turn away. That's a rule of mine. Looking would be an invasion of privacy, even for two women trapped in such a small room. Practically Antsville. But sometimes I can hear her sigh over the molten steam curling over the tempered glass doors like the tail of a ghost. Once the plush cotton towel is wrapped tightly around her chest, I watch her. I watch her prod at the purple bags beneath her eyes, apply a dab of white cream. I watch her rake her fingers through damp, tousled hair, dry it impatiently with a second towel. I watch her squeeze a pink pimple tucked into that tight space between her nostril and her cheek, a line of ooze appearing. I remember poking at that same spot, the same difficult spot in this very bathroom, thinking I wasn't good enough. Like I know she is also thinking. I hate seeing her unhappy, hate watching her pick at her imperfections. I wish I could tell her she's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Donna, Catherine, and Jane combined. A few months ago, I focused all night until my finger, which is usually wispy and translucent, was soft and fleshy. And in the morning, before she woke for her daily shower, I wrote, "Good morning, gorgeous," and a delicate scrawl on the mirror. When she smiled and flushed, I nearly died again. But she assumed it was her husband, and this hurt me more than the ceramic edge of a tub ever did. I've gotten to know him too by watching, but I don't turn away when he's in the shower. He doesn't deserve the courtesy. And it's not because he pees in the tub, a gross golden whirlpool disappearing down the drain. It's not because he sticks a finger in his nose and flicks his findings in the rose gold trash can next to the toilet. It's not even because he hums Frank Sinatra songs when he's brushing his teeth like my Eddie used to do. It's because the walls are thin and I've heard what he says to her. Eddie used to belittle me like that too. He used to whittle me down to nothing but tears. Used to say, "Susie, this roast is tough as shoe leather." Used to ask me, "What the hell have you been doing all day? This house is a mess." When he talks to her like that, I know she makes a brave face and then excuses herself to hide in the can. She thinks it's safe in there, like I did. When she's crying, I wish I could touch her. I wish I could reach out and rest my hand on her shoulder, give it an empathetic squeeze, show her someone's listening, someone cares, even if it's some lost soul with a permanent beehive congealed with blood. But corporalization takes so much time and energy. It would probably take me days to materialize an entire hand for her to feel. And if I did, she'd really flip her lid, wouldn't she? That's the last thing I want to do. So I remain unfocused, unseen, a trick of the harsh fluorescent light. He's yelling again. This time it's about a shrunken pair of socks. I wish she'd tell him to get bent, like I used to tell Eddie. But I don't want her to get hurt. Men can be dangerous, after all. Speaking of, doesn't he know the most dangerous room in the house is the bathroom? Slips and falls happen all the time. I'd focus for a lifetime if I had to. If only I could wrap my hands around his neck, press my thumbs into that delicate apple bobbing around his throat. It's quieter now. He must have gone into the living room. If I strain, I can sometimes hear the murmur of the television, but I've never been able to determine what he's watching, so I just picture Johnny Carson, a favorite of Eddie's. It fuels the hate just a little bit more. The door is opening. She's been crying, of course. I reach out to comfort her, but my fingertips slip right through her wet cheek. I tear up in frustration. As she starts to undress, I look away, press myself into the corner, not that she would ever notice me. When the shower comes on, I hear her cry in earnest, great, gulping sobs, and the scene is all too familiar. I've made up my mind. I have to at least try for her. Starting tonight, I'll focus harder than I've ever focused before. A finger, a hand, a push, a fall. Thank you so much. Ooh, it's been a great night. I've loved hearing everyone. This has been an emotional ride, but it's been fantastic. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my God, I just got chills. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Woo! This has been a phenomenal afternoon for me, right? I'm on the West Coast. So thank you all. I am so grateful to Krista, Zoe, and to you, Lannie, for coming today and joining us and for sharing your work. This, as you said, has been really very emotional. And I'm so honored and grateful that you are all willing to share this, I mean, very serious stuff with this community. And so thank you. And please come again, right? This is going to go on for years and years and years. Maybe one of you will take over as host someday. Who knows? Yeah, this has been a phenomenal day. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And please come back. The next second Sunday reading will be on Sunday, March the 12th. And on that particular date, we'll have a very special host, poet Reagan Petruha. She read for us a couple of months back. It's my husband's birthday, so I will be MIA. But I hope all of you come back and listen to next month's poets. Thank you again. This has been a spectacular afternoon, and we will see you next time.